plan to go back and catch up on the series, the 11 series. And I wanted to know, when you name these characters, do you go into any do you go to any investigation on the names and who should be named this, or how do you do that? Do you have
I do it, and it's kind of ironic that you would ask me that now. Of course, this has nothing particularly to do with The Ultimate Betrayal, but I have a book coming out that I'm just getting ready to write for January or February 2017, and it's called Copycat. And I spent at least 5 hours one day just trying to figure out what the names were for the two women, the two main characters. And then the next day I spent another 3 or 4 hours. And so that person has to be who they are for me. So if I look at a person, she can't be Jane or, Jillian, or she has to be who I see her in my mind as a person. And I can't write a word about her or create the story until I know who they are. I have a baby book that will too help me sometimes, will give me the names of people that represent certain characteristic or personality trait. For example, I could look at somebody who, it's a woman who would kind of be sly and devious, and it'll give me names of people that if I have a mother who is of a certain age, I'll go and look at the names of the popular names for women who were born in the 1940s, something like that. But even when I look at a long list of that, I have to picture that character the way I see them in my mind and say, wow, this is what their name is. So.
I really like those names that you chose for each person in the novel.
I have a question. This is Celeste. And you brought up the topic of swinging. Did you do any research on swinging? And is it just a myth that this is primarily a behavior that's not in the African American culture? Or is that just me, not being naive?
Yeah, well, and I think it's maybe sometimes certain areas of the country, because in honesty, we've heard of it here. Will used to tell me stories about people. He retired from Chrysler Corporation and different people, but it was never African-American people that he knew that about, that would share their experience. I mean, he was just always fascinated, first of all, that anybody would admit to it, That was the main thing. That's just not something any of his friends or my friends tend to do. However, people that I've known in LA have shared that they've gone to swinging parties and it's all African American. So, I think it just depends on the country that you live in.
Actually, Queens Harbor has a swinging ring. It does? Yeah, a subdivision here. Yeah.
It was a funny story about a band that my husband used to work with years ago. And so he was sharing with Will about he and his wife had started going to these parties and these get-togethers. And then they kind of branched off with one particular couple. It was just the 4 of them when they would get together. So they hadn't, done anything in particular. And so finally, when it came to the point where his wife said, I think I'm really ready. She wanted to have intimate relations with the husband. You had this husband and wife couple that they had kind of, branched off with. And so he kind of was, against it, but it's like, okay, we said we would do this, and he went along with it. Well, she had, her affair, whatever you want to call it, with the husband. And then when he said he was ready to have it with the wife, she told him, I want to get out of this. I don't want to be in this anymore. So she didn't, she'd done what she wanted to do. And he's like, well, God, now she's against it, So it's kind of a funny thing to think. How many of us, that made me think, how many people really, really could be okay with their spouse being with somebody else? I mean, I flat out couldn't under any circumstances. I could never be okay with it. So it's just always interesting, but everybody's different.
Karen.
What did you want? This is Celeste again. What did you want us to know about Levi? I mean, I understand this is a Christian book, and he professed that he had recently become a Christian, but his behavior didn't speak to those attributes. So what did you want us to know about him?
That even when people genuinely and from their heart want to change and be better people, I don't think anybody can be expected to be perfect right out of the gate. Okay. You know, and sometimes I think, you know, when you look at people in real life and that person will say, I'm trying to do better, I'm being a better person, and if they make a mistake, people judge them, you know, criticize them. And I've even seen it to some extent in church where they feel like, you know what, I'm just going to go back to doing what I wanted to do because people expect me to be perfect. I'm never going to be that, you know, and so, you know, what good is this? And so that's kind of the thing. I think what you'll find is if you read the next book is called A Sinful Calling. I submitted that last month and it will be out in June of next year. Levi is much more genuine than the majority of the people in the Black family, and he and Alicia are now married. That's how the book begins.
Wow.
Oh,
wow.
Ross had a question.
Well, she just answered it because my question was going to be, are you continuing the series? And so you've already answered that. And I think it's interesting that you have just shared that Alicia and Levi are going to be married in the next book, because we had a conversation earlier and we thought it was pretty much a sexual relationship. We didn't think there was a whole lot of substance there, and that may be because that maybe the relationship that with the substance was established in a prior book.
yes, it was.
You know, I've read several of your books, but when you got to Alicia, and you know, I kind of, you know, stopped reading that, reading some other stuff. But so you are going to continue the series, so we're glad to hear that. And
Yes.
Alicia and Levi get married. That's it. we had a conversation earlier, and we said we thought it was all sexual. You know, that it was so sexual.
Well, I think you may, if you did not read The Best of Everything, you probably would think that. If you read The Best of Everything, you'd know that they have more chemistry than most married people do. You know, they literally, genuinely loved each other, which is the reason why she never should have married Philip. Yeah. She knew who she loved, and you know, that always brought about the question at book club meetings that I attended this year, and sometimes at actual bookstore events when the discussion took place. And of course, these are with book clubs who have read the entire series, where the question came up: should you be ashamed of the person that you truly are in love with? Not that you just love or admire, but to truly be in love with somebody who you have chemistry with. But even though this isn't the person everybody would want you to be with, I mean, this is somebody who was a drug dealer, this is somebody who went to prison. He's not the person that her family would have wanted to see her with, or even just people who looked at her on the outside. And, you know, sometimes people do that. How many people can say, you know, I'm really married to my soulmate. This is the person I love more than anything. I know the person loves me the same way. Or did that person marry somebody that everybody thought looked good, you know, on paper? You know, maybe they have a certain education, they have a certain job, they make a certain amount of money. Maybe they're just really an upstanding person, you know, they haven't done a whole lot of wrong in their life. And I've seen that. And so to go out to book club meetings and have people say, yeah, once upon a time, I married someone because it was the right person to marry, but it was not the person that I was in love with.
Several times we've Skyped with authors, and everyone writes different. Every author writes different. Some write chapter by chapter. I remember one author told us she writes the ending first. Did you have any alternate endings that you thought about for this book that you can share with us?
Never ever, not for all 23 books and the 24th that I just finished. I never ever can tell you the ending until no more than maybe 2 or 3 weeks before I finish it. It's the one thing that I don't try to think about, and I don't want to think about, because I want it to really happen spontaneously when I'm finishing it.
Mm-hmm. Do you think not murdering, but you think the death of Philip, did you have any other thoughts about that? Maybe not killing him off? Did you think anything else, or maybe
no,
going back to jail or something?
My editor and I were just having a conversation about that, because with The Ultimate Betrayal, it was about 3-4 weeks maybe before I finished the book, and this is the God's honest truth. Will and I were driving down the street heading to dinner, and literally I said, oh my God, Philip is going to die.
Oh, wow.
Wow. And he, you know, and Will, he just kind of looked at me, he's like, wow. He's like, you don't mind killing off people sometimes, do you? You know, and I thought, well, I don't want to because clearly Philip was likely one of my most likable characters, you know, that I've written about because he was a good man with a good heart and he tried to do the right thing. But it's just the way I saw the story and the way it came to me and the way I saw things ending for the character, you know. And if nothing else, it's a matter of, wow, be very, very careful who you get mixed up with. You know, I think that's my message for that. Good people die all the time, and sometimes it's because they've gotten mixed up with the wrong person.
We just saw on Twitter that you celebrated your 30th wedding anniversary, I believe?
25th.
25th. Congratulations. Beautiful pictures. Beautiful pictures. Does your husband Will read your novels? Has he read the Curtis Black series? Is he afraid of you? Something? No,
Yeah, he's read a couple of them, the very early on ones, but no, he doesn't, and he can tell you any and everything about the story. There have been a couple of titles that he's chosen, and the publisher will say, "Oh my God, well, thank you. This is perfect for the story." But he'll just say to me, "Okay, tell me every single thing about the story," and that's when I finished writing it. But no, he doesn't. He loves male authors, so I always tell him he's pretty biased when it comes to reading. But he is the most supportive person of my career. You know, some of you might know the story, some people don't know the story, but when I started writing the first book, I ended up getting rejected by every literary agent and every publisher that I submitted to, and was really ready to give up. My mom kept saying, "No, I don't think you should give up. You got to keep going." And, you know, I just believe that if you keep trying, this can happen. And then it was finally Will who said, "You know, why don't you start your own business?" And so he borrowed money from his 401k account. I still really didn't know how this was going to turn out, so that made me nervous. And then he said, "You got to quit your job. If you don't quit your job, you won't ever give this 100% of your time. And if you don't give it 100%, I don't think you can be successful with it." And so I did. And now, of course, you know, we're talking 20 plus books later, and I've been on 22 national tours, and Will has traveled on every single one of those. So it's been a good husband. You know, business is one thing, but I think I write a lot about, you know, marriages and the problems in them, because I was married before, and so is he, and boy, what a change. You know, it was the best thing in the world. And I don't say this because, you know, I always say divorce is not a good thing. None of us want to be divorced, and I don't believe that that's of God, you know, and so that was probably my struggle with getting divorced. But all I can say is, you know, the best thing that could have happened to me was to get divorced and to marry Will, because it really has been a happy 25 years. I know that, you know, marriage can be happy, and I didn't think that when I was married the first time.
Jackie, I have a question. Hey, Matt, how are you?